Good morning everyone. Our topic today is about communication, concepts and functions.
Nature of communication. What is communication? Communication is an essential human activity that is innate in nature. Communication is the vital exchange of information through diverse mediums, fostering understanding among individuals. Key concepts include encoding, decoding, and feedback for clarity, while context, shaped by cultural and environmental factors, plays a crucial role.
Elements of the communication process are source, message, channel, receiver, feedback, environment, context, and interference.
Source. The source imagines, creates, and sends the message. It is also called the sender, the speaker, or the encoder. Message. This is considered as the heart of communication. It can be words, sounds, symbols, or images that contain the thoughts and emotion that the sender wishes to transmit. Channel. The channel is the way in which a message or messages travel between source and receiver. Receiver. The receiver receives the message from the source, analyzing and interpreting the message in ways both intended and unintended by the source.
Feedback. When you respond to the source, intentionally or unintentionally, you are giving feedback. Environment. The environment is the atmosphere, physical and psychological, where you send and receive messages. Context. The context of the communication interaction involves the setting, scene, and expectations of the individuals involved. Interference, also called noise, can come from any source. The evolving process of communication. They are categorized into three, namely linear, interactive, and transactional. Linear model of communication. It's considered one-way process where sender is the only one who sends message and receiver doesn't give feedback or response. Aristotle model of communication, considered the first model of communication. As shown in this model, the speaker has the control of message that will be received by the audience receiver. Therefore, he must organize the speech according to the target audience and situation occasion in order to persuade or influence. Lasswell's communication model. Lasswell's communication model is a simple yet influential concept in the field of communication studies. It was formulated by Harold D. Lasswell in 1948 and is known for its straightforward approach to describing the act of communication. Who, sender or communicator, says what message, channel, medium, or media, to whom, receiver, with what effects, feedback. In a more detailed view, Lasswell's model of communication was also widely used in the analysis of communication. It has the utilization presentation the table that follows. The Shannon-Weaver model. The Shannon-Weaver model, created in 1949, outlines communication as a process involving a sender, message encoding, channel transmission, receiver decoding, and feedback, noise. Disruptions during transmission and the feedback loop are integral to its understanding.
Schematic diagram of a general communication system. Berlow's SMCR model. In 1960, Berlow expanded Shannon-Weaver's model, which he calls the SMRC model. In Berlow's model, each of the elements of communication contains several factors affecting the flow of communication. Berlow's SMCR model of communication. The model is designed to understand the process of communication and the factors influencing it. Here's a brief explanation of each component. Source. The sender or source is the originator of the message. This can be an individual, group, or organization that initiates the communication. Message. The message is the information, ideas, thoughts, or feelings that the source wants to convey to the receiver. It is the content of the communication. Channel. The channel is the medium or means through which the message is transmitted from the source to the receiver. This can include face-to-face communication, written communication, electronic communication, etc. Receiver. The receiver is the individual, group, or audience for whom the message is intended. It is the party that decodes and interprets the message. The SMCR model emphasizes the importance of encoding and decoding processes, as well as the feedback loop between the source and the SMCR model emphasizes the importance of encoding and decoding processes, as well as the feedback loop between the source and the receiver. Feedback is crucial for ensuring that the intended message is accurately received and understood. Interactive model of communication, also known as the convergence model. The interactive model of communication is the second category of communication. The interactive model of communication involves a dynamic exchange between a sender and a receiver. In this model, communication is seen as a two-way process where both parties play an active role. It includes elements such as encoding, message, channel, decoding, feedback, and noise. Encoding is the process of converting thoughts or ideas into a message, while decoding is the interpretation of the received message. The channel is the medium through which the message is transmitted, and noise refers to any interference that may affect the communication process. Feedback allows the sender to assess the effectiveness of the message, completing the communication loop. There are two of interactive communication: first Schramm's model communication, second Dance helical model communication. Schramm's model communication. Wilbur Schramm proposed the model of communication in 1954. According to him, a message can have meanings when permitted by individuals' experience to understand the message. Wilbur Schramm emphasizes the importance of the communicator and the audience in the communication process. It includes three main elements: source, encoder, message, and destination, decoder. The model highlights the reciprocal nature of communication, emphasizing that both the sender and receiver play vital roles in interpreting and exchanging information. Schramm's model. The name helical comes from helix, which means an object having a three-dimensional shape like that of a wire, wound uniformly around a cylinder or cone to show that communication is a dynamic and nonlinear process. The Dance helical model of communication, developed by Frank Dance, expands upon Schramm's model and introduces additional elements to capture the complexity of communication. Transactional model of communication. The transactional model is more sophisticated than interactive model, and is a theoretical framework that views communication as a dynamic process involving the simultaneous exchange of messages between senders and receivers. Unlike earlier linear models of communication, the transactional model emphasizes that communication is multidirectional and constantly evolving.
In 2004, Davis Folger designed the so-called ecological model to update the communication process with new models that are better representative of the structure and key constituents of the communication process that are evident in modern society. The ecological model of communication, also known as the environmental or contextual model, emphasizes the significance of context and environment in the communication process. Functions of verbal and non-verbal communication. In various and multicultural contexts, verbal communication is the use of words and sounds in expressing thoughts and emotions. They are agreed upon and rule-governed system of symbols used to share meaning, including both oral and written communication. There are two types of verbal communication: a system of symbols and verbal communication as rule governed. A system of symbols. Symbols are arbitrary representations of thoughts, ideas, emotions, objects, or actions used to encode and decode meaning. Symbols have three distinct qualities. They are arbitrary, ambiguous, and abstract. Arbitrary words have no direct relationship to the objects or ideas they represent. For example, a cake is not a composition of letters E-E-A-K-E, nor is it absolutely called a cake. Other people might call it differently, say ki-ke in Filipino or keiki, keiki in Japanese. Ambiguous. Words have several possible meanings. Ring the bell if you need anything. Sound off. I will give you a ring when I have decided. Call. The ring perfectly matches her watch. Jewelry. Abstract. Words are not material or physical. A certain level of abstraction is inherent in the fact that symbols can only represent objects and ideas. You cannot touch words. They exist in the mind. What we can see and touch are the objects we associate words with, but we can never touch letters or symbols. Verbal communication is rule-governed. We must follow agreed-upon rules to make sense of the symbols we share. There are 4 general rules for verbal communication: phonology, semantics, syntax, and pragmatics. A. Phonology. It refers to the systematic organization of sounds. For example, we pronounce rock as rak to mean exactly what the word in English means. If we mispronounce it, it could mean another thing.
Semantics. This refers to the meaning and interpretation of words, signs, and sentence structure. Here we can look at the meaning of words either by figurative or literal meaning. For example, I'm rolling my pen. This can be understood as you are playing with your pen by rolling it, or you are writing. Syntax. This pertains to the grammatical structure of words and phrases to create coherent sentences. For example, English and Cebuano do not follow the same arrangement in sentences. Like when say in Cebuano, nagdulako. When we translate this to English, we don't say playing I am because both languages follow different order of words. Pragmatics. This is how the same word can have different meanings in different settings. When we talk about pragmatics, we consider register, social, and cultural backgrounds of the speaker and the receiver of the message. For example, we use different words to invite our friends and our parents to eat. For example, when we feel the gush of wind touch our skin, we say it is cold. Sometimes we say it's as cold as ice based on our evaluation of how cold it is. In this manner, we label our feeling cold. We evaluate, thinking how cold it is, and we classify the said feeling, very cold or as cold as ice. Functions of verbal communication. We use verbal communication to name, describe, classify, and evaluate our daily experiences. Help as organize complex ideas and experiences into meaningful categories. Function of nonverbal communication. The following are functions and example of nonverbal communication are accenting, moderating, complementing, substituting, contradicting, regulating, repeating, deceiving. Accenting. Accenting is calling attention to a key part of the message. When you put an accent on it, you create emphasis, making the item stand out by amplifying it. Examples. Stamping, increasing volume, moving forward, slowing down. Moderating. Moderating is the opposite of accenting as it seeks to reduce attention, playing down a point by removing emphasis and distorting or attenuating it in various ways to make it more difficult to understand. Examples. Reducing volume, speeding up, being incoherent. Complementing is similar to accenting, but covers a wider range of the message. It ensures all speech is paralleled by non-verbal communication that aligns with what is being said. Examples. When talking about sad things, lowering the head and using a sad tone. When seeking to excite, being animated in body and voice. Substituting is the replacement of words with non-verbal language. There are times when non-verbal language is just better. Sometimes there are things that are best left unsaid. Sometimes the raising of eyebrows speaks volumes. Examples. Shall we? Waggling eyebrows and grinning. Stepping towards an aggressor into their private body space with a stern expression.
Contradicting. Contradicting is sending a nonverbal message that disagrees with what is being said. This can be done deliberately in order to confuse. It also may happen subconsciously when lying. Examples. Saying no while gently nodding, saying I did not do it while rubbing the nose and pulling at the collar. Regulating. Regulating is a nonverbal language can be used to send signals about speaking. A typical use is around starting and ending speech. It can also be used to regulate the speech of others, indicating that you want them to stop so you can speak, or perhaps that you want them to respond. Examples. Breaking, or making, eye contact, or giving a final and firm nod, when you have finished speaking, raising eyebrows when you are about to start speaking. Repeating. Repeating with nonverbal signals is like complimenting or accenting. but with a delay between the verbal and nonverbal. Communication. This acts as a form of emphasis, as in other forms of repetition. Examples: saying no, then shaking head afterwards, asking for help and then, after a short delay during which they do not respond, raising eyebrows and saying deceiving. Also, nonverbal signals can be used as a part of lying or deceit. This takes careful control and it is easy to send mixed messages which signal deceit. There are around 600 muscles in the body and it is impossible to consciously control many of these. Examples: saying you did not do it, while looking and sounding insulted at the accusation, getting someone to do something by acting excited, whilst not really being enthused. Influences of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication plays a crucial role in conveying messages without words. It includes facial expressions, body language, gestures, eye contact, and tone of voice. These elements significantly impact the interpretation of communication, affecting relationships, understanding, and overall effectiveness in conveying emotions and intentions. Two types of influences of nonverbal communication are culture and gender.
Culture. Cox, 2017, identified influences on verbal and nonverbal communication including the following: facial expressions, context, eye contact, formality, touch. Facial expressions. Culture can affect the facial expressions that people use as well as the way they interpret the facial expressions of others. In the United States, for example, smiling can indicate that people are friendly and approachable. In Japanese culture, however, people are expected not to smile because smiling at strangers is seen as inappropriate, particularly for women. Context. The way people speak may be determined by whether they are a high-context culture or a low-context culture. In high-context cultures, people explain everything that they're talking about and assume that others don't have any information on a certain topic. Eye contact. Eye contact can show an interest in another person and attentiveness to a message. In some cultures, making a lot of eye contact conveys honesty, while avoiding eye contact is seen as shifty and dishonest. Formality. Speaking can be formal or informal depending on cultural norms. Informal cultures assume that everyone is equal, so people in these cultures speak the same way to everyone. Touch. The way people touch one another may depend upon whether they are a contact culture or a non-contact culture. In contact cultures, people are expected to touch each other when they're speaking and stand close to each other. Gender. Gender plays a role in the way people communicate. Harvard psychologist Robert Rosenthal documented that paying attention is just not men's forte. His investigations showed that most men are inferior to women at both reading, decoding, and sending, encoding, nonverbal cues. Additionally, men are less affectionate and sensitive than women. They are noted to be tough, and tend to project manly and authoritative demeanor. Ethic in communication. Knowing the basic principles in communication can equip a person to make successful communication. Here are 10 basic standards of an ethical communication proposed by Jones John Lewis, 2015. 1. Seek to elicit the best in communications and interactions with other groups. Speak. 2. Listen when others speak. 3. Speak non-judgmentally. 4. Speak from your own experience and perspective, expressing your own thoughts, needs, and feelings. 5. Seek to understand others, rather than to be right or more ethical than thou. 6. Avoid speaking for others, for example by characterizing what others have said without checking your understanding, or by universalizing your opinions, beliefs, values, and conclusion, assuming everyone shares them. 7. Manage your own personal boundaries, share only what you are comfortable sharing. 8. Respect the personal boundaries of others. 9. Avoid interrupting and side conversations. 10. Make sure that everyone has time to speak, that all members have relatively equal air time if they want it. That's all. Thank you.